There's like nothing out. Like we're in the middle of nowhere. And so I called the internet, and they're like, where do you live? So I give my address, and they're like, yeah, we've got like a whole bunch of houses on that street waiting for internet. The city hasn't laid fiber yet, and so we can't come install for. And it was the end of June, and let's see, we moved in the middle of May.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's one of those podcasts? Okay, hold on.
I'm just kidding.
Let me get a drink. I'm going radio silent for 2 seconds.
Yeah, while you're in there, I'm gonna just bring my bubbles up close to the mic here.
Okay. All right, you ready for this?
I'm ready. Pop it. Oh,
that was like commercial.
I know, man. That was like a Coca-Cola commercial Foley right there.
That was fantastic.
That was so good. You know, one of my dearest ambitions. I had two things that I really wanted to do in high school that I never got to do. One was I wanted to gather the entire student body into the auditorium and just hand out cheap cans of soda, just like Shasta, you know, and just give them a 3, 2, 1, and have everybody pop it at the same time. I thought it would be so satisfying.
That would be cool, but where did this derive from?
I honestly don't know. But I don't remember when I first started wanting to do that, but I know that I wanted to do it for years while I was in junior high and high school and never got around to it. The other thing I wanted to do was get on a skateboard and have everybody at the end of the year, you know, they open all the lockers to clean them. And I just wanted to skateboard down the hall with a hand out and just boom, 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 just slam all the lockers shut in sequence. I thought it would be so fun.
Oh man!
I've got a little brother who's actually he's a janitor at the Spanish Fork Junior High, and he said he's done that a few times. So I'm pretty jealous. I need to take him out
on
to
the
lunch.
Skateboard or just closing everything?
Nah, just running down the halls, closing everything. So I'm gonna take him to lunch sometime this summer and see if I can get him to hook me up, get me in there. So no internet though. Tell me what's up with that?
Sorry. You know me. I'm a space cadet, so keep me on track. So no internet. So they're like, yeah, we're gonna install. Like the city's supposed to install in 6 weeks. I'm like 6 weeks.
You can't
Like,
have no internet for 6 weeks.
Yeah, I'm a millennial. What's up? And then 2, my wife works from home.
Yeah.
So work, her work got her a hotspot. So, but it's like totally terrible. And then we just bit the bullet and upgraded our phone internet. Dude, we've been running off 2 gigs shared for years.
Wow, that's
we're
a
like
tight budget.
I know, right? We're so dumb. We're like, oh, I'll spend $40 at the gas station for licorice and peanuts on a road trip, but like I won't spend another $15 a month for unlimited internet. Or like, the worst is, speaking of road trips, I'll eat McDonald's for a $3 meal, but I'll spend $40 at the gas station for the road trip snacks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anyway, so no internet. So this morning I am at my sister's house. So that's kind of why I was like...
Oh, right now you're at your sister's
I didn't know
place.
if... Yes.
Yeah. Gotcha.
So, anyway.
Man, did you relocate just for me?
Just for you.
That was really nice. Is your sister far away, or did you move closer to your sister?
Well, if I told you she was far away, then it'd be more impressive, right?
Yeah, that's right. She's in like Alaska or something. You went up to Juneau to do this interview.
It took me like 6 minutes to get here. It's just like across town. I saw this picture on the internet, though, since I have nothing else to do but scroll on my unlimited data.
Yeah, gotta use it. Now that you got it, don't waste it.
I saw a picture of you. You were chilling out, playing your pipes like downtown Provo.
Oh yeah. Yeah, dude.
What's all that about?
I just saw. I hadn't seen the picture or video until this morning. And I pulled it up and I started laughing. I should not have been reclining like that. That was silly. But there was just like a bike. There was just like a bike rack thing there, and it was pretty comfy. And I was out there playing for like 20 minutes, so I just started leaning on it. And so then when Dave came out, I'm not sure if he's a pastor there at that church. It's the Provo Community Congregational Church of Christ.
Yeah.
I think I got that name right. Like some other churches we might know of locally, it's a long name. And so.
Oh right. Yes.
Yeah, I should have been thinking and stood up. It would have made better copy if I'd been standing up straight instead of chilling.
But I guess what is it you were doing?
Oh, the Provo Art Crawl. It's just like there are a few like restaurants and places like that along sort of. That's not Main Street. What is that street? Is that University?
University Avenue.
Yeah, I think it's University Avenue. They and maybe it goes on other streets as well. But they just have local artists can put up their art inside of local businesses, and then people can move from business to business. Buy a snack, look at some art, maybe buy some art, that kind of thing. And that church, they're trying to raise money right now to do a big rehaul, and I really want to help them out however I can for sure, because it's a beautiful building, man.
It's way cool.
It's so cool. And so
I played in that building.
Yeah.
For those listening to the podcast,
I've played in there
because the Garden Valley does they did the St. Patrick's Day the one year that I was there doing that.
Yep.
That was cool.
We joined them for a Christmas concert there once as well. But yeah, it's such a cool building and really great people running it too. And so, so they're participating in the art crawl, partly just to communicate, to be part of the community, but also partly just like the idea is if you can get people inside that building, it looks kind of cool from the outside anyway, but if you get up close, you start seeing the really cool detail work around the windows and stuff like that. But if you go inside into their, is it called the sanctuary? I think the main congregational hall in there.
Yeah. What would be the chapel or?
Right. Yeah. The sort of the main where everybody gathers to hear the preacher. It is such a cool room. This massive A-frame ceiling that just goes up forever. It's just such a cool room. So if people can get in there and they see how cool it is, then it's like, you might recruit more people to the cause to try to raise some money for this rebuild that they need to do.
Right.
So anyway,
I was jives with Provo because Provo. Well, I guess Utah probably in general has got a lot of historical buildings or things like that they're trying to save and keep up. So.
Yep. It's kind of like
this church probably isn't that old to be marked a historical location, but
well, actually, the older part of it. So that A-frame was added later, but the older part of it is pretty dang old. Yeah, the A-frame is newer.
That would make sense.
Yeah, the other part though, maybe I'm just gonna look it up real quick. It'll take a little bit of editing in the post if I want to be a decent podcaster.
Magic.
That's right. Yeah, let's see.
You need yourself a Jamie like Joe Rogan has.
Oh man, if I could get a Jamie and get a cool studio. I wonder what he did with his weird trailer. I'd take it. No. Can I have it, Joe?
I was chatting with my buddy the other day from work, and I was explaining to him my love for ginger beer.
Oh yeah,
and all the varieties.
Can you put it into words?
Well, I'm trying.
Yeah.
I can put it in my mouth.
Nice.
But anyway, he likewise is a connoisseur of the ginger beers.
Mm.
And then with my love and obsession for energy drinks, did I ever tell you about Rockstar? They made a ginger energy drink.
Oh, I didn't know that. Now, first of all, did I ever tell you about Rockstar? Like, buddy, I've heard of it, But I see about their ginger energy drink. Oh, yeah.
This little company.
Yeah, this little artisan drink. But no, I didn't know they made a ginger energy drink. Is it still around? I'd drink that.
No, it's not. It was good. It had some spice to it, like it kicked.
Yeah.
And which is what I like in a.
Oh, me too, man. I want it to burn.
Yeah. And so, no, but I noticed that they were getting harder and harder to find, and I was asking a gas station attendant. I'm like, "Do you have any ginger beer?" She's like, "No, I haven't seen them for a minute." And then because I buy an energy drink every day on my way to work, I stopped in, and she goes, "Hey, ginger beer?" I was like, "Yeah." She goes, "The delivery guy said they're discontinuing it," and then he dropped off the last case that my store was going to get. So I bought the case. It was like, 12 drinks or whatever.
Yeah.
This was like 2017.
You're like Elaine from Seinfeld. You can like run around town, find all of them, and like stock a closet completely full of them.
Yes. I totally forgot about that episode. And so, but I did. I drink one like every 3 days and just savor it for a month or whatever.
Yeah.
But it got discontinued. Well, Monster just came out with one.
Oh.
I shouldn't say just. Now it's probably 6 months old. And it's no way as good. It's very, very sweet.
No, wait, it was Monster that just came out with it? It was Rockstar that did the good one, and then Monster's coming out with one now.
Yes.
I see.
Yeah. So you can try one out if you're into that.
Man, but yeah, like you said, I don't drink ginger beer for the sweetness. I drink it for the for the ginger, for heaven's sake.
Mm-hmm.
I want it to be spicy.
You know what's a cool one off Amazon? Is unless you go out to like the Midwest or the South, there's a brand called Buffalo Rock.
No, wait, didn't you
And
bring me a can of that once?
I may have, because I had a coworker that was from the South, and he brought back a case, and I grabbed like 4 or 5 drinks.
I think you did.
I don't know if
think
I
you
ever
brought one
shared
to
you
me.
with.
Either you brought it to me or you told me about it in such detail that I felt like I'd experienced it. One or the other.
It's good. It's a really spicy one.
Well, we had other plans for this podcast, but I think this is now our ginger beer episode, right?
Sure. No. Let's get off topic.
All right.
Because
Well,
if we do the ginger beer, we've got to do wings with it. And if we're going to do wings and ginger beer, I say we take a recorder to Buffalo Wild Wings and
Yeah.
chill.
deal. We'll take some prep for that one. We'll do that one. Well, that church, if you're interested, the older part of the church is 130 years old. So it is older. It's probably worth looking up
Nice.
online if you ever
It's
want
like
to.
1900s.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool.
1890.
Yeah. And then that A-frame actually isn't all that new. It was added in 1956, so it's getting there as well.
Mm-hmm.
But the old building had a cool look to it as well. I mean, I love that A-frame. Don't get me wrong, I love that A-frame. But the part of the old building that got removed to make it so they could attach that A-frame had this really cool sort of Spanish colonial look to it. Very cool. Very cool. So, go ahead.
All right, yeah.
Yeah,
I was
no,
just gonna
yeah.
go off. I was going to talk more about the chapel, but let's get to the meat and potatoes.
The meat and potatoes. Well, tell me, Swan. I want to know how. I don't know if this book changed the way that you memorize music, but before I even
100%.
say what book it is, I want to know how you used to memorize music. Tell me how you used to do it before reading this book.
So, let's see. When I was like first starting piping, and for a number of years after that, it was pretty much just play it again and again with the sheet music in front of me
Mm-hmm.
on my practice chanter. And then slowly, try to play bits and parts and pieces. Well, but in order, right? It was always start from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Play. I've done it. I've played it on repetition so much. I'd try and play it without the music, and I would like look at the music and I'd play it with the music, and then I'd immediately look away and I'd play it without the music.
Mm-hmm.
But it was definitely just like sight reading, repetition over and over and over and over until it was kind of drilled in. And then I bet a lot of the memorization, like I'm trying to think back to my early piping days. I bet you a lot of my memorization came from band rehearsal, just playing it together, playing it together. Watching the pipe major, and kind of following their fingers when I'd get to a sketchy point,
Mm-hmm.
kind of watch what they were doing and get through those gaps that I hadn't had fully memorized. And even, I guess that has to be like even up until my first season with Garden Valley when I was getting that set memorized. Because I jumped in February right after Zach passed away.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember like mid-April, maybe end of April, probably mid-April. Still, Alex nobody had the music memorized, and Alex led a rehearsal, and we just taped the music to the wall, and we all stood staring at the wall because we were on our pipes and played with our pipes. But same thing, I guess, just sight reading, sheet music, repetition over and over and over.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking about something similar. That I was just trying to think to myself because, like, so in the book, okay, so I'll say what the title of the book is. Right, we're reading. We read Strategies for Learning and Memorizing New Tunes by Stephanie Burns. Is that what it was?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Stephanie Burns, Dr. Stephanie Burns. Include the doctor. She earned that. She previously wrote Practice Strategies That Cause Musical Improvements, which I have not yet read, but maybe that's the next one we read, huh?
I am into that one. I don't know, 45 minutes.
I'll see if I can catch up to you then. So the previous book seems to have been pretty well received. So this book is, as the title would suggest, about memorization. And I was thinking about, similar to you, I was thinking about sort of the early pipe band days, when I was playing in the high school pipe band. because she talks in here about, well, she spends a decent chunk of the beginning of the book kind of talking to people who might think that they can't memorize music. Well, it's just because you don't think you can, or it's because you think you're too old. She talks a lot about that. You know, like a lot of people think like, well, I could memorize stuff when I was a kid, but my memory is shot now. So how could I memorize anything, you know? And she does a pretty cool job of sort of dispelling the idea that your memory is getting worse. She suggests that what we forget, we remember that in high school, in grade school, we had a lot of stuff memorized.
Yeah, like I thought one of the cool things was that she was saying people can remember how much they can't remember.
What just happened? what just
Bro.
happened? What was that?
I just found a helium tank in my sister's office.
What?
Oh, this is so great.
Okay, go ahead and just take a hit from the helium whenever you want throughout. That'll keep things very interesting.
Oh, that was fantastic.
I completely missed the content of what you said because my mind was just racing to figure out what was going wrong.
I was looking for a break. I was kind of holding my breath, waiting for an opportunity, and then I was like, I'm running out of breath. I just got to jump in. No, she said what I said was, in the book she talks about like all these people are like, I have such a bad memory, and then she's like, write down all the times where you've all the things you've forgotten, or all the things somebody else has forgotten, or whatever.
Right. This is like when she's teaching a clinic, right? So she's got a room full of people.
Yes.
Yeah.
And she's like, and then at the end, she's like, isn't it amazing for how bad of a memory you have? You can remember all the times you couldn't remember.
Right. Like all of them like filled up their piece of paper immediately.
Right.
Like, I forgot this, I forgot this, I forgot this.
Right. Exactly.
So she's talking about how like we think that we used to be like have such a great memory because we could remembering things when we were younger, but she talks about how our brains kind of jettison the memories of the process of memorizing those things, right? Like we forget that we took copious notes, that we highlighted our notes, that we reviewed things with friends, we used flashcards, all this kind of stuff. Our brain dumps all of that and just thinks, I used to be good at remembering stuff, but now my memory is terrible. And here, and then, this comical example of like, here's a list of the 24 things that I forgot in the last week.
Exactly, right? And I think, so, and what she's trying to do is dispel the myth of like having a bad memory.
Yeah.
Not that some people won't, but like the percentage of people are like, I can't memorize, I have a bad memory, my brain's not what it used to be. She's like, that percentage is way too high to be accurate.
Yeah, it
and then
can't
she
be
starts, she starts doing these types of exercises, right? Like
Right.
the remember the times that you don't remember, or and then she's and I don't know how fast you wanted to walk through the book and get through the discussion, but she starts taking them through an exercise.
Yeah, with the word, with the anarchy
Or hierarchy.
Hierarchy, that's right.
And memorizing hierarchy.
Yeah. Yeah, and let's talk about that practice. Because the only thing I was going to say was just that I reading her description of that made me remember that the way I memorized stuff in my earlier pipe band days was a lot of repetition. I mean,
Yes.
We had an hour and a half pipe class every other day, and also after school rehearsals. And then for fun, Zach and I would get together and play our pipe tunes, like our band tunes, because we didn't
Or
have a
at-home
mortgage or anything like
practice.
that. And a lot of, exactly. So my mind had dumped all of that work that I used to do to memorize, and my mind just goes, man, I can still play the MSR for my junior year in high school. My memory was so good then. Why is it terrible now?
I think what's important to, she makes mention of in the book, the part that really stuck out to me is the sight reading, repetition, memorization of music is the wrong way. It is very much, I can't think of the word I'm looking for right now, but
inefficient, maybe?
yes, she goes, sight reading is a separate skill from memorization.
Yeah. Which can be encouraging because a lot of us aren't all that great at sight reading, and so we might think I've got to get better at sight reading before I can get better at anything else. That's not necessarily the case. She says, you should be familiar enough to be able to read it, but, it's like you could have a guy who's not that great at reading sound out the words carefully and slowly, but if he memorizes those words, he can then deliver the speech, with complete fluidity.
So the thing with hierarchy, right? So in the book, she does some things, and I guess she does this in workshops too. But she takes the word hierarchy and she breaks it into chunks,
Mm-hmm.
like 3-letter chunks, right? So
And she doesn't just say this conceptually, right? She in the book they're printed in this nice way, so she takes you through this exercise in the book, which I found like illuminating. It was really cool.
Right. So she breaks it into chunks, and she just focuses on HIE, right? So then it's like she's like, look away from the book. Don't similar in like not yeah. Anyway, she's like, look away from the book. Look at a blank wall. Look out into space. Visualize with your mind the letter H, the letter I, the letter E, and see it.
Right, and like in the
Like
bold
try to
typeface that
visualize
she has
a
it
picture.
in that graphic in the
Yes.
book, right? Like you're trying to see, like
Yes.
is this Times New Roman or is this Comic Sans,
Right.
right? Like
Is it
see
capital?
it as
Is it lowercase?
Right.
And then I remember she said, point to each letter in the blank on the blank wall with your mind's eye, right? Physically point to it with your finger, and say it out loud as you point to each letter, HIE, and then do it backwards, EIH. And then it was like she wanted you to think of a color associated with that.
Right.
And I've listened to a TED talk about a guy who was a journalist, and he was trying to do a story on people that do the memorization competitions that have these great memorization abilities, and he started learning how to do it, and then he ends up going in and winning some competitions actually. But he talks about how like the out there, the crazy, the random, the extreme helps people memorize things. That's one of the tools. There's lots of tools. But so I remember when I was looking at it, I visualized like a neon pink, and maybe this is because I do signs, right? I do signage. So I was thinking like if somebody made a neon sign out of the letters HIE, and so that's what I visualized was neon pink HIE. I'd say it backwards EIH, and I'd point to it in the air and this is all part of her. It's written out in the book. This is what you're supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then we moved on to RAR. Same
Right.
thing.
Do the
Picked a
same
new
thing.
color, do the whole thing, and then CHY. And then
And every time she's also saying like, what's the first letter of that set of 3? What's the middle one? What's the last one?
Mhm.
Now what's the last one again? What's the middle one? So you're not only learning it in sequence, you're learning just like the image. It's like you're getting,
yes,
and that, I guess that's the idea, right? You're getting a mental image that you can actually look at and reference.
yes, that's very important because exactly right. Like, and I've noticed this too. Like, if you've ever been playing a tune and then you just cannot think what's the next note that comes
Yeah.
on the pickup to the second part, but then once one person plays the pickup note for the second part, all of a sudden you can just jump in and finish out the thing.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that, for me, what I'm thinking is this has to do with the order sequence of like memorizing the flow or sound, but not actually having a visual, a mental image that you can picture. You close your eyes, picture in your mind, and see the music on the page.
Right. Like
Right?
if we want to contrast this, I remember doing piano when I was younger. There was this complicated piece that I was learning, and I had a very good teacher. And there are different ways to learn, sure, but like reading her book changed my mind about how to learn music, really. Because the way that this teacher had me do it, this instructor, he would have me go, okay, what's the first note? Play it 5 times. Now, what's the second note? Play the first to second note 5 times. Now play the first, second, third note 5 times. Now first, second, third, fourth note 5 times, right? And actually, I think it was 10 times. And so it was 100% building a sequence, right?
Yeah.
Which is fine, but what it means is, there were a lot of notes in this song. We're talking hundreds of notes, right? So I'm building this long sequence. And so if I get to note 47 and something distracts me and it breaks that sequence so I can't go on to note 48, there is no way for me to pick up at note 45 because the sequence starts with note 1. And I'm sure we've all experienced that, right? If you're playing by yourself and you've got something like Memorize, you're just playing along, you're kind of in the flow state, right? And then something distracts you, then it's like, I have no idea what comes next. And you can't just pick up where you were. You have to start over again.
Right. And so what I thought was really cool is she leads you through this exercise, like you said, calling out like, what's the first letter of this phrase? What's the last letter? What's the middle? You know, 3 different colors. One associated for HIE, one for RAR, one for CHY. Visualizing it, pointing at these invisible letters with your finger in midair so that like your brain's trying to actually project an image. And then in the end, she has you spell it backwards.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so cool because all I had to do, and I could do it as fast as YHCRAREIH,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm visualizing. I close my eyes and I can visualize each letter of the word. And so it's not like, oh, I've memorized the word backwards. I've created and ingrained a mental image. So when I close my eyes, it's like I'm reading words off a page, and then I just start at the right and read to the left.
Yeah, yeah.
You
Or
know
you
what I
could
mean?
start in the middle, or you could go every other letter because you're looking at it as if you were looking at it on a page. You can do anything
Yes,
with it.
exactly. And like, dude, when I went through that exercise, I was like, mind blown.
Yeah, I got so excited. I was telling my wife all about it. I was like, "Sweetie, this is going to change everything in my life, not just
I went-
music."
I went to work the next day and I was talking to my coworker. I'm like, hey, ask me to spell hierarchy backwards. He's like, what? I'm like, ask me to spell hierarchy backwards. He's like, spell hierarchy backwards. I'm like, YHCRAREIH. And he's like, why did I do that? I'm like, dude, let me tell you all about why I did that.
Yeah.
But
Hey, and that's part of it too, right? You can't just do it the one time. You got to kind of top off that memory, kind of run through it and work on it, right?
yeah,
But
and she talks about that, freshen it up,
yeah, freshening it
check
up, right?
back, and
She
especially
also
with like music.
That's right. And she also talks about this idea of asking people what their front door looks like, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is another good example of what it is that she's doing. Because I don't know. I feel like what she's doing it's a paradigm shift, right? It's like I'm used to memorizing things like in order, in a line, in sequence, And it's not so much saying I'm going to teach you a better way to do that. It's more like saying that's not even the game we're playing. That's not even it. Throw that out. We're doing something entirely different here. So when she asks somebody, "Tell me what your front door looks like," you have almost definitely never stood in front of your house trying to memorize your front door in some sort of sequential order, right? Like as if, like from the top left corner down to the bottom right corner or something like that. What you do is you bring up an image in your mind. Because you've walked through your front door so many times, you can bring up an image almost like you've got like a projector in the back of your brain, and if you close your eyes, it'll just project the image on the back of your eyelids, and you can just look at it and say, oh, it's this color, it's about this big, here's what my doorknob looks like. And you can probably go further from that and say, like, now here's what the window next to it looks like, and here's what kind of bush I have next to it and stuff like that. None of this has been sequentially memorized, but you have an image of it. And that's just kind of come about naturally. And so this hierarchy thing, you proactively created an image that you could later reference. And so then the magic, of course, is after going through that exercise, then you kind of, at least for me, that's when I caught the idea. I was like, oh, so what if I could project an image of every tune in my MSR on the back of my eyelids?
Exactly right.
It's almost like
That's
cheating.
exactly how I felt.
It's kind of like it's not memorizing, right? It's more like I've got a secret up my sleeve that I can just pull this music out and look at it whenever I want to.
Exactly. I felt the same way. It's like the object is to create a visual mental image. Like that when people talk about like a photographic memory, I thought this has to be the same way, right? It's not that they just look at something they haven't memorized. It's they look at something and they have a visualization, an image that's imprinted.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we're trying to force to happen in memorizing the music. And then I thought it was really cool because throughout the whole book, she's got quotes and interviews and stuff with all these top musicians in the pipe band world.
Right. There's
So
I've got the list here. What we got? Jack Lee.
Yep.
He's a big deal, of
Stuart
course.
Little's in there.
Stuart Little, Reed Maxwell,
Mm-hmm.
Steve McWhorter.
Steve McWhorter.
Now,
Mm-hmm.
Zephan Nichol?
So I think
I mean, no offense to the guy. It sounds like he was instrumental, especially in this book, but I hadn't heard of him before.
I'm pretty sure I could be totally wrong. And if you have some listeners that know different, they're going to crucify me. But I think he plays with SFU, and then he helps with the RMM program.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, I think there's a bio at the end of the book, and I'm pretty sure SFU does come up.
Um, I don't remember who else is in there, but she got all these top people. I remember Jack Lee specifically, right?
Yeah.
So we just talked about like color coding things and breaking it into chunks and looking at things frontwards and backwards and middle out.
Right, with the word hierarchy, right?
Mm-hmm. And then Jack Lee talks about some of the things that he does, like he will he'll listen to somebody playing the tune, he'll sing the tune. I know Jack's big into canter rock too.
Yeah.
But he'll sing the tune, he'll listen to somebody play the tune. He says he likes to get up and walk around and like have his feet moving.
Oh yeah, didn't he say like he finds that the more parts of himself are engaged, like whether it's movement or moving his, singing or something, his voice, whatever it is, the better it goes for him.
He made mention of that. And so he started throwing out like some tools to use to create this mental image beyond just like color and chunks and order of things. So I thought that was really cool because that then gave me some other tools to use to try and create this image.
Yeah. It is interesting that when I read that, it's like there are disparate points that would not have otherwise connected. But as I read through these, I love the little interviews and comments that she has from these musicians because it's really insightful. Because it's kind of like, from what I understand, she kind of bounced ideas off of these people as she was writing the book, and then kind of maybe had them review it in a semifinal state as well, and then like say like, well, yeah, this works for me, or I didn't try this until you mentioned it, Stephanie, but now I've tried it and it works. Yeah, here's my experience with it. Mm-hmm. And it made me think of when I was younger and doing community theater and trying to memorize lines for these plays I was in. And how often, if I had like a long chunk of lines and I couldn't remember, or a long sequence of lines where someone else would talk, then I would talk and it was hard to remember it. One of the things that worked really well was just to look around on the stage and think about like what props would be there. And, think like, okay, there's going to be a potato in the cart and potatoes make me think of this. That means that, this line is what comes next. Like I'd look around spatially and like use the space around me to help me remember stuff. And then even when I was reviewing my lines by myself, I just close my eyes and go to the stage and I could look around it and see the potato there, and I would remember my line. I just never would have thought of using this as like a strategy for music, though. That's the thing that like it was not connected before.
Yeah. So I thought like, I mean, I guess I'm probably just talking myself in circles, but like, this is the way to do it. Like, holy cow!
Yeah.
I did that exercise, and I immediately started like just memorizing stupid words backwards.
Yeah.
Just because.
Yeah.
And
doesn't she say something like that? Like when you first start learning these strategies, go ahead and memorize everything you can.
Use it. Yes. It's definitely like a skill that you have to learn.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And you become better at it as time goes on. And this I have noticed. She starts talking about patterns in pipe music because of the way it's structured.
Right.
And I did notice I've listened through a couple learning strategies with like Ken Eller, and Ken Eller was talking about and Stuart as well. I watched a conference with him on it, but they start talking about tools and things for memorizing music and this repeating pattern that you see through pipe music is pretty prevalent. And so I noticed that, once I jumped back in with Wasatch, and it was like, we've got 2 MSRs, we've got our medley, and then we've got a set of 6/8, a set of 9/8, a set of 3/4, a P-Brock jig set. Like they just got a whole bunch of show tunes and warm-up tunes and march on and off tunes and stuff for drum majors when they're the duty band playing for the drum majors, things like that. It's like a whole lot of tunes. And I just come off the season with Garden Valley when I had to learn all of their music.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I was definitely getting better at it and better at it. Like I was honing that skill, but I really started to recognize that repetition. And so I usually break things up by measures when I'm looking at a new piece of music. So I'll take a new piece of music and I'll just start highlighting each measure with a different color that's different. And pretty soon, like half of the second line is a repeat of the first line. And then when you get to the second part, you've got 2 or 3 parts that come from the first part, and then you've got some new music, and then you get to the third part, and you've got some recycled stuff from 2 and 1,
Mm-hmm.
and then you get to the fourth part, and of course there's new bits, and it's recycling stuff from 3, and you're memorizing. Like when you look at that sheet of music, what you have to memorize is like half of that or
Right.
less.
Or less. Yeah, you'll get a 32 bar piece of music. There's actually only 8 bars of distinct stuff, you know?
And it's the order,
Yeah.
right? Or like, and now I've started to notice like you'll have the whole measure's the same except for the last note will be like a different note because it becomes a pickup or an embellishment or something. And so it's like, even without all the other skills that I hadn't read the book yet, just recognizing the repetition and highlighting the music really, really started to open up the speed at which I was like memorizing things.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think that part of it, I don't remember if she mentions this in the book, but do you think part of it is like when you first see that new piece of music, like it can be a bit overwhelming just because it feels like a lot? But then breaking it down like this makes you go, oh, it's actually not that much. I can do this.
Yeah. Yeah. But she kind of mentions that, right? Because she says, before you start to memorize it, right? So she makes a big distinction. There's a difference between sight reading and memorization, 2 different skills.
Mm-hmm.
And and she mentions that we should talk about this in a second. Do not memorize while reading the music.
Oh, yeah. That was really interesting to me, too. Definitely nothing I'd ever thought of, for sure.
Yes. All right, so let me go back. I don't remember what I was going to say.
Well, we were talking about highlighting music and stuff, right?
Yeah, but so Stephanie does say, you mentioned something, and you're like, she doesn't mention it in the book, but, daunting, right?
Yeah.
So this is what she does say. She goes, you need to be able to play all the pieces.
Yeah.
Before you start to memorize. So you should you should pull up your sheet music, and it's like, okay, yeah, looks good. Okay. I've got a bubbly note or a tarlua from
a reverse tackum or something impossible.
Something
right?
silly, right?
Yeah.
Or a dardo or some crazy embellishment.
Yeah.
It's like you need to kind of work on that with your practice chanter, with the music, kind of grind that out to where you can play it. And it's not mastering it and becoming perfect, but it like has to be playable so it's not as daunting. And then you go back to start to memorize. And
it's like if you were reading a book or trying to memorize like a speech, right? And there's a word in there that's really complex. You'll need to take a minute to sound it out to where you can actually say it.
Right. Perfect.
Yeah.
So she mentions that. And then what I just brought up, right? Your brain's doing 2 different things when it's sight reading versus memorization.
Yeah. And again, when we say memorization here, we mean making a mental image of it, not building a sequence.
Right. And so I thought that was super, super eye-opening. And so I started to do that. I'll download a PDF of the music from the band. I'll put it up in Photoshop, and I'll start highlighting, breaking things down into segments, creating different color codes so that it's helping me, right? It's another tool to memorize. So now I know, I've got 4 pink measures, and the pink measure goes like this, and I can see where they're at in my mind. I've got one at the beginning of the first, one in the second bar of the second part, and then whatever.
And you're breaking it down by measures. I think some people break it down by phrases or parts, but like in any way, whatever it is, right, whatever it comes out to, it's a tool that helps you. So if it's helping you, that's the idea.
And she was like, be fluid with it. Like some people, they need to memorize maybe a beat at a time, right?
Yeah.
Maybe half a measure. Other people, a measure is a good starting point, she said. She goes, as you gain skill, you can be memorizing a couple measure part, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and not to keep alluding to just reading like books, but that's the science of reading more fluidly and even speed reading is that you go from, letters that sounded out make words, and then you're reading words, and then eventually people read lines of text at a time.
Yep, same thing. Perfect analogy. Yeah. I thought it was really cool too, because one of Jack's comments was that he does not pull out the practice chanter and start playing through the music. He picks it up, he walks around the room, he sings it to himself, he's listening to it. But all that memorization starts without playing it while reading it, I guess.
Yeah, I think Stephen McWhirter actually said something similar, like he can't remember the last time that he memorized a tune with sticks in his hand,
Mm-hmm.
which just blew my mind, you know. But like he'd do the memorizing independently of holding his sticks, you know, and then he'd play it from his mental image.
One of the things I thought was so cool about about all this is like I don't feel like Stephanie was talking so much about the band setting for
Yeah.
memorization. I thought she was talking really about like soloing type thing or solo playing and stuff. And because like when I first thought memorization, I think of like, I'm sure we've all got people in our bands where it's like, man, so and so struggles to memorize music, and it's like 2 weeks before we compete, and maybe they don't have it down. Maybe that's yourself. Maybe you don't have it down. You know, maybe
Yeah.
maybe Mike Swan doesn't have that piece of music down.
Oh, I've been sitting there in the band tent before going on the green with my practice chanter and my music out, just going over phrases a million times for sure. Yeah.
Right. And so like, I immediately was thinking like band setting, you know, like memorizing music to play with the band. But she was talking about soloing, and I guess she made mention like, have you ever been just playing along, and kind of what we talked about earlier, like you're just playing along, and then you don't know how the second part starts.
Yeah, it's just gone.
You
Totally
need the
gone.
first two notes or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and so the point of memorization wasn't that you were cutting out in the middle of competing with the band. The point of memorization was that you weren't stalling in front of the judge. You weren't breaking down in front of the judge.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that's like the same thing, except there's in a band setting, like if you just need that pickup note or two and you ease off your pressure and cut your chanter out and somebody plays the next two notes into the pickup, you usually jump back in and keep going.
Sure. Though
I've noticed like
like,
soloing around.
ideally we
it's
wouldn't do that, right? But
Of
but
course,
yeah, like,
yes, ideally, yeah. But I guess what I'm saying is there's kind of like, I mean, I've done it. There's people out there that I don't want to say like fake it as I think that's the wrong choice of words, but like I've done that. I've been like, got super, super nervous about this next upcoming part. I can't think of how it goes. And I ease back off my pressure. My chanter cuts out. And so my drones probably go out of tune a little bit. And then somebody plays something and I
Then
jump
you
back
come
in.
back in, yeah.
You know, and the volume of the band's going everywhere and every which way. But like, I've done solo stuff when it's just like, I have no idea what I'm doing. And like, this has happened, James, this has happened at least 2 competitions.
So when that happens, do you just make a song up?
No, what usually ends up happening is I end up playing one part 3 times.
Oh yeah, you just kind of run in
because
circles
I'm
until you
like,
can remember what
I
to do
kind of
next.
missed that pickup, right?
Yeah.
And then it's like, what do you do? Well, the first time that ever happened to me, I made up for it by playing the 4th part only one time.
Well,
The judge is
Did
like,
the
"Did
judge
you play that
notice?"
4th part twice? Well, I've had mixed experiences.
yeah.
Neither time have I placed. I'll say that, but
Yeah.
like, it's kind of like I don't know what the official rule is, but I think it's like if the correct amount of bars of music is there, like I haven't been disqualified,
Yeah.
but I definitely wasn't rewarded for it. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? So,
I've made up a whole tune before. I think it was what do you do in grade 3? Is it a Strathspey reel? There's some
I mean,
there's
yeah,
some
you
combination
can.
one that you can do.
yeah, there's a stress bay reel. There's also I think grade 3 might have a hornpipe jig.
It
There's a
must-
stress bay reel for sure.
it was definitely the Strathspey reel. I had the Strathspey down great. The reel was so shaky. I got to the reel, played the first part, could not remember anything else. So I made up a reel that loosely followed that reel's form. It was a terrible performance, and yeah, I did not do well either. But it wasn't even like it
My
followed the
problem
form,
is-
but it wasn't even remotely the right song.
Let me just gripe for a minute.
Go ahead.
My problem is this. If you break down, I would say 50% of the time, they don't even give you a judging sheet, or they give you a judging sheet with no comments on it. It's just like broke down.
yeah, or it just says scratch or a line through it or something like that.
Yeah. And my thing is, I'm going to sit there, drone, and play low A with G grace notes for 32 bars of music so I can get a flipping judging sheet with comments so I know where to improve.
Yeah, you did
Like-
pay the money, and they are there anyway, and you've got a time slot, so why not?
that's my thing. Like, and some people are there. It's like, well, the only thing that matters is the points and the placing. It's a competition. You're there to win. That's the idea. And then there's the other mentality of like, I want to know where to improve. Like maybe I'm not taking private lessons, but I want someone who knows what they're doing to give me some pointers.
Yeah.
So
Play for sheets, as the Chanterant guys would say.
That's right, and I think that's becoming a common thing, to the idea to play for comments and sheets and improvement. And that's how it ought to be anyway. It should always be striving to improve, and then as you improve, your best performance will win it or not on the day that it is.
Yeah. Well, and it seems like, I haven't sold as much as you have, but the experiences that I have had, most judges have been really great people, and I think probably if you broke down and then just were like, well, I scratched, could I still play through the tune that I remember for you or something? They'd probably say yes and give you some notes or something.
Yeah. Or ask them to like, hey, can you give me pointers on my judging sheet even though it's a scratch? Just I want to know where I can improve. Or even verbal comments.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
I was quite surprised. Like, I've seen so many people perform and then they just like, thanks, and then they walk off.
Mm-hmm.
I played in Payson, and I walked straight up to the judging table. And I don't know what I was thinking. Like, if I was going to say, like, thanks for judging or whatever.
You were going to slip him a $20 bill. That's what you're thinking.
I walked up to that judge, and he just started giving me, like, a million things of feedback. And they weren't good. It was kind of like, it was kind of embarrassing.
Yeah.
Because my parents were watching.
Yeah.
And my mom's like, how'd you do? My dad's like, doesn't sound like you did well.
Very honest
Definitely
father.
didn't do well. Thanks. Well, the judge was just not like, he wasn't, he woke up on the wrong side of the bed.
Yeah.
The judge wasn't just like, here's a lot of things you need to fix. Right?
It was like, you're wasting my time.
Pretty much. Like, I remember
man.
one of the things that stood out to me is he's like, he goes, we expect people at this level to at least be able to get their drones in tune.
Oh.
And I was like,
man.
Okay. Like, I was hit so hard. I don't even remember half the other things he said. I went back to the band tent, struck up, and my drones were flipping rock solid.
Like a gospel choir, right?
And I was like, what? And I like asked a few people to listen to my drones. Like, they sound great. I'm like, do they sound out of tune? Like, there's no double toning, right?
Right.
Do they sound in tune? Like, I didn't get high before I went and competed,
Right.
and I'm like hearing what I want to hear and not what's actually there.
Yeah.
Like, and they're like, no, it sounds good. I'm like, I just got my butt reamed.
It's weird.
Ugh,
like bagpiping, competitive anything that is like art is weird anyway, right? But it's kind of like, it's like watching Olympic figure skating, you know?
Yeah.
Like, in the end, did you impress the judge? You know, like, you try to make it technical, you try to make it so that there are, like, you know, arbitrary means of judging the quality of the performance, and to some degree you're probably successful, but in the end there's so much of like personal opinion, and it's like those studies that have been done that like judges in like criminal courts give more severe punishments before lunch and less severe punishments after lunch.
Oh yeah.
You know, it's like,
Hangry.
man, yeah, you got to get a judge who had a good night's sleep. Get your judges a decent hotel room when you're hiring them, or everybody's going to do terribly the next day, right?
As long as it's even.
Yeah, right. As long as it's even, right?
But
It is funny though. There's just inherently like what would you call it? Like there's just opinion and personal experience so inherently baked into all of it that it's tricky.
Yeah. So on this book, so is there anything else you want to talk about in the book before I'd like to talk to you about your experience with trying to memorize tunes after reading the book.
Oh yeah.
Is there any more things you wanted to hit on inside of the content of what Stephanie was putting down?
Well, basically, I think we pretty much covered it, you know, because like as I was reviewing my notes from having read it, I had to keep reminding myself, like, we're not doing an audiobook, right? We're not like reading the book. We're giving a taste of it, and hopefully, I'm really hoping people that we've given a decent taste of it, because it's a great book. Like, I'm hoping everybody in the band in Garden Valley will get a copy of this book and read it and apply it, because and everybody else too
yeah.
in the world. I think it's amazing.
Like I am definitely like a fiend for of like the words. I'm
English
definitely
words.
like I'm definitely a little crazy for consuming content.
Yeah.
I love it, right? And there's not a lot of bagpipe content out there, at least compared to other genres and stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely willing to give my money towards things like that. And James, thank you for buying me this book.
Hey, you're welcome.
Um,
That's
but man,
that's the only compensation you receive for giving hours and hours of your time to the podcast. So
I love this. It's so much fun. But so I guess what I'm saying is, I would have no problem, and I would encourage everybody to put forward the money. Like after I read this book, I was like, "Oh man, she's written 2. Where's the next one?" And I went straight to Amazon and bought that one.
Yeah. And I mean, the ebook is what, like $7? Like,
yeah, I bought the Kindle version.
So worth it. So worth it. The only other thing that I wanted to kind of point out is just how I was struck by how often not only Stephanie herself, but also the people who she's interviewing, these world-class drummers and pipers, talk about using strategies like saying, I think it was a 13-stroke roll is hickory dickory dock, or that they highlight their music with colors, stuff like that, because I see, there's that McNewby's annotated bagpipe music Facebook group that
I'm not familiar with this.
I did an interview with the guy. If this interview goes out in January, then it will have come out a little while ago, but he's actually local, great guy. Doesn't play with any pipe bands right now. He just basically gives a lot of time to this Facebook group for like learning bagpipers who are having a hard time memorizing music, and he helps them annotate the music, where he'll put the note name underneath the note if that's what they need, but the main thing is highlighting it with colors. And he's got a lot of hate from a lot of people online. People going crazy like, it's only 9 notes. You got to learn it proper. There's no reason for all this higgledy-piggledy color coding and stuff, But man, why? If it works, if it helps, why not? And then to have people like these amazing players saying, that's what I do, just it legitimizes the tools, right? And I really liked that a lot. That I thought that was awesome to be like,
yeah,
Jack Lee sings it, and yeah. Anyway,
no, you're exactly right. Like Stephanie's saying, use color, and through her exercises, she's using color. Stuart Little, when I sat through his presentation, same thing, breaking it down, highlighting it in color. Ken Eller, same thing, dude. Ken Eller, that little pitch for Piper's Dojo, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think if you sign up as a premium member, you should be able to find Ken Eller's video on memorization in their archives. And he talks about when he joined in with the Frasers up in Canada, and he had to learn like 60 tunes in 2 months. He had to learn a tune a day to be able to cut it for their big concert thing that they were doing.
Yeah.
And so he talks about having to learn how to memorize for that and stuff like that. But it's so cool. But anyway, using color, breaking it down, just like we've talked about, things that are going to help you create that mental image. And going back to the TED Talk that I watched on the guy that had won memorization competitions, like they, those extremes, those, like he said, and I, like I said at the beginning of the podcast, he would use these extreme things, and so your brain would latch onto that more. So like, if he was trying to tell a story, and he'd create the story and then write it down and stuff like that, he would have elements just similar to you, like you were memorizing the prop location and things like that in the play. He would remember like Cookie Monster sitting on top of a parade float that was being pulled by a Corvette. Like that's out there.
Yeah.
But like each one of those would be like a symbol or a jumping point. It'd be like the pickup note into the next phrase.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I felt like it was very much that way. We look at a black and white sheet of music every time we're going to go memorize, right?
Yeah.
And then as soon as you start like putting highlighters down and drawing little figurines and doodles and parentheses and stuff like that.
Hey, I hadn't even
You're
thought of that.
starting-
I love that idea.
Oh, yeah.
Add some doodles
Yeah.
to it. That's a
Uh-huh.
great idea.
Then you really start creating those extremity things that your brain's going to latch on to more, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think she says something in the book about like find the similarities and then note the differences. And maybe I'm making connections that weren't there, but if I remember right, she talks about how like finding the similarities helps you to kind of relax and realize you're only memorizing so much stuff and you're going to reapply it here and here and here. But then spotting those differences is like these are the touchstones where you like, you know, like you say that that's like the transition point where you go from this part to this part, right? This is like your lighthouse on the rock, right? Where it's like, now we move to this.
You know, this is kind of off topic, and I know I'm going to slaughter it if there's like some academic out there in the listening audience, but they did a study on like men's brains and women's brains, and they asked them to do stuff like draw a bicycle from memory and how do you get to this place and stuff like that. They did like mazes, hedge mazes, and people really got that. They would do different things that would screw up women and not the men, and they'd do things that would screw up the men and not the women. And like one of the things that they mentioned was one of the genders they were looking for like key points, like in memorizing the bicycle. They're like, this tube goes down and it eventually connects to the crankshaft, the pedal crankshaft. And then from there it goes up and it eventually connects to the top tube where not the top tube. That's a different tube completely. But I don't remember the name for it, but where your handlebars go through. Right? And then from where your handlebars go through, you have the top tube that goes to the seat post. And then from the seat post, you have the chain stays and the wheel stays that come down and blah, blah, blah. And so one of the genders was like looking for the intersection points and was able to draw a bicycle from memory much more accurately. And it makes me think of like when I'm driving down the road, I'm not really paying attention to how long the block is or the house is on the block. I'm looking for the corner that I'm supposed to turn at.
Oh, yeah.
And I know I just go down here until I get to this specific stoplight. And so what you were kind of saying, it made me think of that, like noting the differences, like looking for similarities, but noting the differences. It's like sometimes we get in that flow state and we're just cranking through that second part. But the intersection is when we've got to get to the pickup note to the next part.
Yeah.
Or where does the repeat happen? Or where's the one note that's different? You know, this bar of music and that bar of music from two different parts are the exact same, except for there's one note difference.
Yeah.
They play a D instead of an F. Where does that happen? And looking for that intersection point.
That makes a lot of sense. Or when transitioning from one tune to the next. That's one in the band setting that's always been a challenge for me. First of all, figuring out how are we going to transition here? You know, do we hold this note out or do we, cut this note out and put the beginning of the next tune in there? Or do we write 4 bars that transition, whatever it is? And if I've just barely repeated the last part of the first tune twice, how tempted will I be if I'm on cruise control to just keep repeating it instead of going into that different thing to turn the corner, as it were, into the next tune?
Right. So after reading the book, did you have the opportunity to put memorization into play?
Yeah.
Or not yet?
Yeah. I got the first tune that I tried it on was and it's funny that I'm not sure what the tune is called, but it's an Irish like an Irish national tune that was a request for a wedding that I was going to play. There was a really simple tune, just a march, but I basically just needed to stick it in my head real quick so I could go and do it for this wedding, and so I just color coded it, and basically it was just 2 colors,
Wait. Did you color code it with red and green?
No, I didn't. that is one
Why
challenge.
not, James?
That is one challenge to this color coding thing. If you're severely colorblind, you gotta get. So I've got 3 different sets of like different highlighters from different companies, so that between them I have enough options that I can have like 3 or 4 colors that are distinct enough one from the other.
Yeah.
But
That's awesome,
that's probably part of why the doodle thing, I hadn't even thought of it when you mentioned it. That is so appealing to me because like I use Trello a lot. You familiar with Trello?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I use that a lot for my personal life as well as for work. And I love the developers so much, if for no other reason than because they included a colorblind mode. So you don't have to color code stuff. They have
That's
a pattern option. So it's like diagonal lines, polka dots, checkers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's nice. Now, of course, that's kind of hard with sheet music where it's already black and white. If I'm going to go on there with a black pen and draw patterns, it's going to get really confusing. But what I'm thinking right now is, why don't I use my highlighter on a physical piece of paper and do diagonal lines for part 1 in yellow, and then the next part might be, the next thing I highlight might be orange, but maybe I'll do curly cues in it, because that pattern might actually be better for me than the color, because my day-to-day life, I cannot depend upon color, And so I'm just not used to using it. And so maybe if I use patterns, it would work even better for me.
Well, remember, I work at a sticker shop.
Yeah.
We could do 1/4-inch size stickers, little tiny stickers with different drawings on them, just different whatever symbols, letters, kangaroo, horse, octopus. I don't know. You can put those above each measure, right?
Yeah.
Or just draw something or whatever. But yeah, anything that kind of makes it novel.
That is what my kids in their piano program, that's what their instructors have them do, is when a part repeats, at the beginning of the part, they have them draw a star, and then they'll draw that star at the beginning of every part that repeats. And then on the next part, they draw a smiley face, and they draw a smiley face at the beginning of every part that's like the smiley face. And then usually the last part is going to be like a star, but a little bit different. So then they'll do a star with a circle around it.
Yeah. Just a slight change, yeah. Same thing with pipe music.
Well, I'll tell you, though, my favorite application of this so far, and I do definitely still feel like I'm a baby with the process, In fact, there's a part in the book where it says something like memorization is a journey, not a destination, You'll always be getting better at it and tweaking it and stuff. So I definitely feel like I'm at the beginning of that journey still. But there is a Fred Morrison tune called Shawnee's Tune. That it's from his Outlands album. That I've been trying. He plays it in a set with 2 other tunes, and I've been wanting to learn it for years and trying to learn it for fewer years, But there's this one part, right? I'm going to pull the music out and. Are you familiar with the tune?
I may have, because I've listened to Fred Morrison stuff. Yeah. But and while you're pulling out that music, I think one of the things that I'm thinking about is that interview you did just a little bit ago on the small pipes, and how a lot of times small pipes aren't accurate, or the music isn't. Or maybe this was an interview with Ross Miller. I could be mixing up a couple interviews, but it's lots of times small pipe music is just feeling the jam, and it's not note specific. Yeah. And if you miss a note or you miss a doubling, nobody knows, nobody cares. You just keep going, and that's different for Great Highland Pipe competition and stuff. But
for sure.
I think one of the things that I don't think we've said yet, but for me, the biggest part of having your music completely memorized so that you're not struggling to play the tune is now you get to become expressive and creative as a musician to evoke that emotion in your performance, right?
Yeah, and I remember that in the book they say something like, okay, first we're going to take the emotion out of it. We're going to do this work. Then you're more free to put the emotion into it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that is true. A lot of times you buy a book of small pipe tunes, a lot of times there aren't even embellishments written in. It's just assumed that you're going to kind of do this the way you want to do it.
Interesting.
It's definitely kind of more loosey-goosey in that way. But Shawnee's Tune, it's the one that it's a Strathspey. It starts out like this. Does that sound familiar at all?
No, that's all right.
Well, it's not the Train Journey North, but it sounds kind of like that when it kind of picks up steam as it goes. But just check this part out and tell me if you can imagine why this would have been hard to keep straight. It's in the the third part or so. It goes like this. Sorry, I did that. Yeah. I did that a little bit messy, but I'll leave it in because I'll be authentic. I was real. I was a little bit nervous, so I did a little bit messy. But
it's just live.
But you get the idea, right?
Of course.
That section, I love it. So I want to do it right. When it's done right, it sounds amazing. But man, it was hard to do it right. Just I just ended up going F-A, 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 F-A just for a while and being like, now it feels about like it's time to switch to the other one, So 100%, I went in, colored it, looked at each little tiny section of notes and just like went, here's what it looks like forward, here's what it looks like backward. Now, here's what it looks like to just look at the space between the notes, you know? And so then, honestly, the beginning of that tune, because I'd already been practicing it kind of trying to learn it for a while, I've got a kind of sequential memory for it already in place, you know? So it's kind of like I'm in autopilot, but when I come to that part, I pull up an image of just that part. And I can go, okay, I don't have to count, because that's what I'd tried before. I'd tried going, okay, there are, 3 or 4, however many there are Fs before it switches over to the E's, you know? So then as I'm trying to play it, I'm also trying to count them. I always would lose count. So it just was not working. So just when I get to that part, I can bring up that image and just play the sheet music without actually looking at the sheet music, you know?
No, exactly. And that's what I took from the book, is that's what it should be done, right? Because she talks about different levels of memorization, and, eventually you get to that level of amazing grace where it's like, it's now muscle memory.
Yeah, you could make breakfast while you're playing it and not even skip a beat.
Right. But she talks about, like, I think she mentioned like 3 different levels of memorization, but having that, it's like marching into the circle with the sheet music in hand. You can just pull it up mentally and visualize it, and just at that point sight read the music that you've created a mental image of.
Yeah. And it's even better than, like, we say sight read, but, like, of course you've also been playing it for a while, so it's like you're also very, very familiar with it. It's just like it sounds too good to be true in so many ways. And maybe that's part of why it feels like a big chunk of the beginning of her book is dedicated to, like, telling you, no, really, this is real, this really can work. Yeah. Like, here's the science, and here are some examples. I promise this can work, because I know once you read it, you're going to say this is too good to be true, but really, it can be true. And that's definitely the way I felt.
Totally. But, I mean, it's what you said. It can work because it takes work, right?
Yeah.
But if you're going to put in the work of playing it hundreds of times, sight reading, I say put in the work doing it this method, because it's... Anyway, so I as well have been using it since then. Dude, grade 2, it seems like we never stop learning new music.
Yeah.
And then, of course, but the first one I started, Field Marshal plays an opener on The Spice of Life on their Impact album. And it's Donald McClellan of Rothsay. It's baller. I loved it. And so I learned it. And so that's what I've been soloing with this year. So it was awesome. Like, it was cool because I remember one of the big things that I've tried to do in the last couple of years is not become that piper that's a master on their practice chanter and struggles on their pipes. Yeah. Like, I try to move off my practice chanter and onto my pipes as fast as I can. Yeah. And so with Donald McClellan of Rothsay, I actually went straight to pipes.
Oh, did you?
So and, like, of course it wasn't good and nice, and I was doing it a part at a time. So, like, it took me 4 days, but I'd memorize one part, and then I would immediately put it on pipes for practice, and then I'd master the second part. No, I shouldn't say master. I'd memorize.
Right. Get it at least well enough that you could play through it.
Yeah, and then it was going out and hashing out and working out everything on my pipes. And, of course, I found out, I was playing the wrong grace note here. I didn't have that mental image as firm as I thought I did, and I was playing one wrong note in the third part. But I would go back and I would check up on it, and it took me a little bit to, like, get it down and fluid and nice, but only that week to have it memorized to where I could now just jump on pipes without sheet music and start hammering away at it.
Yeah, and isn't that, it seems like that's one of the things, like, maybe partly because this is new or different from the way we've done it before, but it's like, this does take work, and maybe more intense work, but only for a very short period of time, and then your life is so much easier. It's so much better when, like, compared to just, like, sight reading and sight reading and sight reading for a very long time until it sticks in the sequential format in your brain. Yep. That's just, it takes so much longer and so many more repetitions. Like, just from the very beginning, start building the mental image, and then you can stand up and play it on your pipes, like you say, in like 4 days, instead of after 6 weeks of going over it a million times by yourself and with the band and trying to find videos and all kinds of stuff, you know.
Yep.
So worth it. I mean, it's some work, but it's like it's way more efficient. And especially where, since, you know, thinking about earlier days in pipe band when I was in the high school pipe band and stuff, where there was plenty of time to do it in any way. Efficiency didn't matter. Compared to now, where time is such a precious commodity, it's like, yeah, like give me any tool you can, right, to make it so that I can more efficiently pack this into my brain and carry it with me, because I don't have the leisure and free time that I did when I was a kid.
Exactly right. I concur.
Well, cool, man. So if anybody has not yet been convinced, just take a direct plea from me. I promise it's worth it. Get this book, especially if you're in Garden Valley Pipe Band, because I want all of us to be able to talk about this when we get together at practices and stuff. I'll put links in the show notes, so feel free to hop over there if you want a direct link. But if you just look up Stephanie Burns Bagpipes, I'm sure you'll find both of her books right away.
James, before I pass out, I want to thank you for the opportunity to have this interview.
Thank you, Tiny Swan.
Tiny Tim.
Oh, no. Do you know Tiptoe Through the Tulips?
No.
Oh, no. Do you know of Tiny Tim the musician?
Not by that name, no.
Okay.
It's not the Tim that you interviewed a little bit.
No. No, Tim Cummings and Tiny Tim are both wonderful individuals, but definitely very different musicians. That's okay. Well, this episode will probably fade out
Just take it from me, I'm just as free as any daughter. I do what I like, just what I like, and how I love it. I'm right here to say when I'm old and gray, I'll be right in my prime. Living in the sunlight, loving in the moonlight, having a wonderful time. Having a wonderful time. Thank you, my dear friends, how sweet you are.